move on to a question for Manuel. Can you share with us about the growing convergence between nature and climate in the current discourse? Thank you.
Thank you, Mahing. I am Manuel Pulgar Vidal. I am Climate and Energy Global Practice Lead with WWF International and former president of COP20 10 years ago. So we are here to discuss or to share with you some reflections about climate and nature. Because yesterday we had here in COP29 the Food Day, tomorrow it will be the Nature Day. So perfect to be in the middle of the two, discussing how important and why matters to connect climate and nature. But let me start, Mahing, by saying something so important. For WWF, this discussion it is so important, and it will be so instrumental in continue making us to achieve climate and nature objectives. But in this COP29, for sure, we have a priority, the climate finance, the NCQG. That is clear for WWF, and we are expecting to have a strong outcome in the NCQG and in climate finance. But let me come back into the climate and nature nexus. It is also important to describe how much we have already gotten, how much traction we have developed because of what science is telling us. Science means IPCC for climate and IPBES have already recognized the importance of addressing the intertwined crisis. And we have in climate 5 transitions suggested by IPCC, and one of those transitions, it is a straight focus on nature, deforestation, land use, and agriculture. But for sure, even the other transitions, as the energy one, has a connection with nature, because in the deployment of renewable energy, we have to include mechanisms to protect biodiversity and to protect rights. So also there is a connection there. We are still waiting from IPBES a report to know exactly what are those transformational sectors that we have to address to achieve our nature objective. And by having the two, IPCC transitions and IPBES transformational sectors, we will be more able to implement or to execute our actions. Having said that, let me say that it is important to recognize and to know how to navigate in a COP. Because we used to think that a COP would be just a place for negotiators. And probably, yeah, that was true in the past. But now what we do have, it is different places in which different things are happening. Negotiators that are negotiating based on mandates. We have the presidency priorities, thematic presidential priorities. We have the Marrakesh partnership with the non-state actors, and we have the dynamic of the civil society discussing in different events in the pavilion. And it is amazing how much the discussion to connect climate and nature, it is happening. And that is something that we have to appreciate, because, let me also say this as WWF, some people sometimes it's discussing on how much we have to reduce the number of people coming into a COP or to split negotiation with civil society dynamic. And we think that that would be a big mistake, because it is by having different groups discussing new topics as climate and nature synergies that we can build the mandate for the future of negotiation. Because we know that this must be a dynamic process in which we must be able to rebuild mandates as a way to continue keeping the Paris Agreement as strong as we had always expected should be. So let me move now into some other elements, that it is, what are those mandates that we have already received from previous climate COPs? The climate and nature relation or synergies, it is something that it was recognized in COP25, organized by Chile in Madrid, in which a paragraph in the decision, it was included. And then that was reiterated in the following COPs, COP26, COP28, and even then in the UAE consensus as part of the global stocktake. So we are in a time in which we have to build upon, and that is something that my colleague will address. We'll go into the detail on how to build upon those recognition, because something that also as WWF, we are always insisting it is that we don't need to duplicate paragraphs. We do need to build upon the previous one. That is the idea of the COP. It is a gradual process in which we can achieve more things and we can reach some objectives by moving in this gradual process. Let me finalize by saying that Fortunately, also, the inclusion of nature into negotiations, also that is happening. Because at least in the current draft, there are some reference to nature in the NCQG. There are some reference in the discussion of procedures and modalities for the global stocktake too, among some others. But also, for sure, in the discussions around adaptation. So it is time to continue pushing towards those synergies. We know how effective it will be if we are able to promote a dialogue in between conventions, but even if we can, by new mandate, push this negotiation forward by recognizing the importance of the synergies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manuel, and apologies. I forgot to introduce the panel and myself at the beginning. As you can tell, we are towards the end of the COP, so memories are failing me, at least. I'm International Climate Advisor from WWF Netherlands. Manuel, who just spoke and also introduced himself, thank you so much for doing that, is WWF Global Climate Energy Lead. And now I will move on to my next question, and I will introduce the panelists as we go forward to Vanessa Morales. She's our WWF Senior Expert on Climate and Nature. Thank you, Vanessa, for being on the panel. So my question to you is, how is nature being discussed at COP29? And can you also share with us about the WWF Climate and Nature work program, and where do you see this going towards in the future? Thank you.
Thank you, Maheen, and hi, everyone. Maybe first, let me start by with step back and looking at where we're coming from COP16. So, as you know, we're just coming back from Cali, from CBD COP16, where the Colombia presidency fortunately created this strong momentum for biodiversity. And one decision on biodiversity and climate change was agreed there. And this decision has really good elements to build upon connecting with the climate process. So, for instance, at the national level, the decision brings the promotion of synergies between the national strategies and plans from biodiversity with the NDCs, so the MBSAPs with the NDCs. And also through this national coordination planning, review and monitoring process. Also, it brings another element which is important, which is integrating and promoting nature-based solutions as part of the MBSAPs. And those nature-based solutions should ensure social and environmental safeguards. Another important element from this decision is that it calls to strengthen the tracking of various sources of finance to enhance understanding and transparency, because there were some concerns around the double counting between climate and biodiversity finance. So also it's good to see that it acknowledged the global stocktake outcomes, mainly the paragraph 33 on the importance of conserving, protecting and restoring nature, and also paragraph 55 on the implementing integrated multi-sectoral solutions and also nature-based solutions. So finally, it also look for ways or explore ways or avenues to promote synergies across conventions. So there was a call to parties and other stakeholders to submit ideas by May 2025 on options to enhance this policy coherence between conventions. And also the call to the CBD Secretariat to invite the secretariats of the UNCCC and the UNFCCC to a technical information exchange on 2025 to explore these options of cooperation and collaboration to implement the GBF and the Paris Agreement. So these are good elements that we can build upon, and it was a strong political signal for COP29 and UNFCCC on the synergies. And also we need to remember that just after this COP, we are moving to Riyadh, to the UNCCD COP16, which also will have the synergies as a strong topic on the negotiations. They are also planning separately to create a new action agenda on the certification. So there are good signals coming. So moving to COP29 around nature and synergies. First, I think Manuel mentioned also that here we are going to see tomorrow, again, also this effort on the Rio Trio, which is the presidencies of the three conventions, which are aiming to promote more dialogue between the conventions. Second, we are seeing the updated NDCs coming from the different countries. Of course, they are expected to come most of them by next year, but we have some good examples, such as the one from Brazil, that is setting ambitious targets both for reducing deforestation and for forest and savannas restoration, right? So that's a good signal also, because it's also responding somehow to the GST call from last year. On the other hand, we are seeing also willingness from parties to, on the one side, find a place to welcome the COP decision that I just mentioned before on the synergies of diversity and climate, but also to land the nature discussion in the UNFCCC negotiations, because we need to recognize that now there's not a home or a space where nature is officially negotiated, right? It's somehow it's fragmented. We can see nature as part of the GST, of the Oceans Dialogue, of agriculture, but it's not a one place to discuss all the nature progress that we have made under UNFCCC. So as WWF, we are coming to COP with this proposal of creating, as Mahim mentioned, a new climate nature work program, which would be, of course, under UNFCCC, and it would be complementary to any joint work program or other cross-convention collaboration that would emerge from what I mentioned before of the biodiversity and climate decision process from the CBD. So this proposal of the Climate and Nature Work Program here in UNFCCC is very focused on implementation, right? As Manuel mentioned before, we have previous decisions at COPs, COP25, COP26, 27, and COP28 with the GST that are calling for the importance of nature for achieving the Paris Agreement. So the idea is to operationalize these decisions and the GST, and also the GST in this paragraph 33 calls for the alignment with the GBF, right? So that would be part of the idea. So additionally, to operationalizing these decisions, the work program would look at exploring, again, synergies between the national plans, the NDCs, the MBSAPs, the NAPs, the National Adaptation Plans, to maximize these societal benefits. Optimizing co-benefits and synergies on finance, mainstreaming and financing nature-based solutions, and ecosystem-based approaches, right? So, of course, again, as I mentioned, this new work program would definitely consider or bring the outcomes in other processes, such as the Oceans Dialogues or the agriculture and food security joint work on implementation, and of course the GST. So in terms of how it would work, we are envisioning a minimum of 4 years duration of this work program, with a decision ideally to be adopted with conclusions and recommendations. And these recommendations would fit into the next GST, into the next global stocktake. So to decide specifically which are the elements that would be discussed, I mean, the ones that I mentioned before could be some of the elements, but we could think of a workshop maybe next year, intersessionals at Bonn, to propose these recommendations. And that also would still help to fit in the recommendations for the next round of NDCs. So this proposal is still being explored with countries. But just to finish, just wanted to reiterate that we are expecting to have nature and nature-based solutions well reflected in the outcomes of this COP, and we will continue to work on this. So Manuel mentioned it's already reflected in some of the discussions, but it is important to understand the positive benefits of promoting synergies, right? And we're thinking it will be more, we're bringing more effectiveness in our outcomes, we are bringing more efficiency in the use of resources and capacities, and more coherence, again, in our policies and in our actions. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa, for that. So that's a nice segue to our next speaker, Hamad Naqi Khan, who's the Director General from WWF Pakistan. Hamad, can you share your insights on financing nature-based solutions and also about the program Recharge Pakistan, as this program is aiming to contribute to both climate and nature? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maheen. Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon, everyone. So as both of my colleagues clearly stated, that you can't work in isolation on nature conservation and climate action. They go hand in hand. I mean, nature has been a victim of climate crisis, you know, whether it's forest fire, droughts, or floods. We have seen the damage which the ecosystem faces in any country. But nature also provides cost-effective, simple solutions to address climate challenges. I mean, that has been the philosophy of WWF, which, you know, now we religiously advocate and lobby. I'm from Pakistan, which is one of the most vulnerable country if you look at the climate crisis. We regularly have heat waves, droughts, forest fires, floods, and I think the 22 floods, everybody remembers that. The slight unfortunate part is that in the past, most of the development and financial institutes used to focus on pure gray structures, engineering solutions for such natural disasters. Whether, you know, the ADB, the Investment Development Banks, World Bank, you name them. So it was not, you know, easy to get financing for nature-based solutions. The things have changed. That's the good part. And things are changing in a positive direction, led by the main climate financial mechanism, which is the Green Climate Fund. So, you know, Maheen mentioned the Recharge Pakistan. I think for WWF Network and for Pakistan and for many countries, I think this is a project or program which is entirely based on nature-based solutions. We want to, you know, address the flood risk through eco-based adaptation. We want to use the flood water to restore our wetlands, which were lost because of, you know, multiple reasons. We want to work on watershed management, whether it's an afforestation program, which we strongly feel is good not only for, you know, as a carbon sink, but also to manage and regulate these hill torrents and flood waters which create havoc, damage livelihoods, people, nature, wildlife, literally everything. As I speak, there are still people, you know, who were affected by the floods in 22, and they are still not, you know, able to stand on their feet because they lost everything. I mean, so, you know, the good example of Recharge Pakistan, but it's also then becomes very important to demonstrate that such solutions work. I mean, for GCF, this is the third largest adaptation grant. For Pakistan, this is the largest grant on climate adaptation and nature-based solution. And we have identified the sites which were badly affected by flood waters in the recent past, and regularly, you know, being affected. And then another thing is that for local communities, nature has always been, you know, their friend. They used to, you know, live with nature, you know, always used to support nature conservation. But because of these unplanned development patterns, they are at the receiving end. So I think the good thing, again, where entities like Green Climate Fund, but also the governments. I mean, if you look at the government's NDCs and the National Biodiversity Action Plan, it categorically states you know, nature conservation, under the adaptation, nature-based solutions. And this program provides a solid, you know, support to accomplish that. I think I'll stop here.
Thank you so much, Hamad. I would like to open the floor to questions from the audience, please.
Hi, I'm Aruna Chandrasekhar from Carbon Reef. I think it's really interesting coming from COP16 in Cali. And we're also at a finance COP. which is why the decision on finance in Kali was quite disappointing. The fact that we didn't get a new biodiversity fund, and the amount, the quantum we were talking about is a fraction of what we're talking about here. We're talking about 20 billion by 2025, and here we're talking about 1.3 trillion, right? And the sort of progress, what is your feeling in terms of dedicated finance for nature? Because it looks like Article 6 is being pushed through as climate finance and flowing, and where nature-based solutions is in the negotiations, and this is the one part where it seems to be doing or tasked with lifting this very massive burden. And loss and damage, I'm sorry, sir, that has been bumped to the next round of negotiations,
Thank you so much for your question, Manuel, if you would
Thank you. I will start, and probably Vane can complement if she wishes. So for us, it is so important to have dedicated finance for nature. But even in discussions in Cali, we were discussing resource mobilization for the synergies. And it was so interesting. We know that, unfortunately, resource mobilization in Cali, it was not a topic that finally was addressed and decided and agreed. No? So I hope that soon, some people say that it could be in February, some topic, it could be recovered in an intersessional as a way to be adopted. But for sure, we don't need to have that money. What happened in Cali, it was a discussion about if a new fund or to continue working with the EEF. And we at WWF, we have a position that it is more related to effectiveness. Because for now, in climate, we have like 10 different funds. No? The point it is how much more funds we can create. What we should do it is to see how can we be more effective. And when it is about effectiveness, it is about on who should put the resources and to where the resources must be allocated, and what are those conditions to promote a fair access to those resources and to get to the ground and mostly to the more vulnerable. So those are conditions that we do have clarity at WWF when it is about resource mobilization. Something else that also it was raised in the discussions in Cali, it was about the avoid double counting, no? And that, for sure, that is something that for years we have discussed here in the climate conferences. But yeah, it is something that we have to be clear that we do need to include principles and conditions to avoid the double counting. But to summarize, to wrap up my answer, yes, we believe that we do need to have dedicated resources, mostly when I've already mentioned a more clear transformational sectors identification will come, and then we will need to allocate resources to walk those transitions, but also because it is related to nature. And as the Living Planet Report 2024 has just said, we are still losing nature. In 50 years, we have lost 73% of the well-documented species. So we are entering into three main tipping points: the subpolar gyre, the Amazon, and the coral reef. And so we do need to shift the systems as a way and mobilize resources as a way to address that reality.
Thank you, Manuel. Is there another question that we can take from the audience? Yes, I see a hand there.
Thank you. My question is to Muhammad Naki Khan from Pakistan. I'm Sakil Millat Morshid from Bangladesh, actually. We are working on this floodplain management by the community. So you talked about the fund, which is really nature-based solution is there. Can you just elaborate few 2-3 points of what are the activities you are doing with that funding?
There's also another question here, and then we'll come back to the panels.
Good afternoon. My name is Alberto Palombo. I represent Rotary International, and I'm right now coordinating the environment sustainability area of focus as a cadre. Saludo, Manuel. Mucho tiempo. Since the times of Lima COP. What we see in many of the funds is that they follow more or less the same path. Let's get to the countries, let's get to implementing agencies, executing agencies. There is an accreditation process. For organizations that are community-driven and membership-driven like ours, we have 35,000 communities that we attend directly. Less than 100 kilometers, about 90% of the humanity, except China. Rotary has direct contact with communities. But it's a real challenge for an organization like us to be a direct contributor, even though that we have the capacity because we have the capillarity to get to the communities. And in climate, like in biodiversity, most of the solutions are local. Okay? So local solutions, they add up to global solutions, looking at that from the very optimistic way. So is there any ways that we can work with the implementing agencies of these funds so that we can work at the global level, but at the community level using this capillarity?
Thank you so much. We have 1 minute to answer that question, but please note that the panelists will be available for comments after this session. Hamad, would you like to quickly answer?
I can quickly take the first question. I think just to give you a few examples of nature-based solutions, we can talk about using, improving the natural drainage of water, embankments, creating retention ponds, check dams to reduce the speed of flow water, gabion structures for slope stabilization, which use, stones. And so this is like, it can't be one size fits all. Based on the local, the challenges, you create solution which, in many places the community have been using, but you have to use, maybe kind of modernize it. But this is, and then obviously climate smart agriculture, just for livelihoods as well. So this is a huge, chunk of activities which are being employed.
Thank you so much. I think we are out of time. Manuel, would you like to say something?
I know that we have 15 seconds. So in relation to your question, climate finance and communities and how to allocate resources, look, we are always thinking that we are starting from scratch. And the world has already developed in many, many places mechanisms to attend the supply side, donors and how to allocate resources and who should put the money on the table, and beneficiaries, that it is the demand side. In conservation, there are great experience for that. For example, in WWF, we have the project finance for permanence, that it is about on how to organize this demand side to receive monies, but also to make a very effective and efficient use of those resources. So we have a task in our hands, that it is to organize ourselves. Indigenous peoples are demanding indigenous direct finance. That means that we have to know how can we organize that to get that money straight to the people.
Thank you so much to our panelists, and thank you for joining. If you have any questions, we will be outside for comments. Thank you very much.
Bir.